Hey guys, thanks for watching our video. Brett Trembly, founder of the Trembly Law Firm. And today I am talking with and interviewing criminal defense attorney extraordinaire, a good friend of mine, a fabulous criminal defense attorney, EJ Hubbs. EJ is a good friend and a fantastic criminal defense attorney here in Miami, has a firm that focuses mostly on criminal defense and immigration. And we are getting so many questions from business owners about what are the ordinances, why are they counting, what's coming down from the state, how does this affect my business, what happens if I continue to operate. There's a lot of information right now. It can get very confusing because it's coming from the federal level and the state level, and people are sending their opinions before things really happen. And there's just a lot right now. So EJ and I are going to talk about what this really looks like for businesses, what the civil penalties are, and are there any potential criminal penalties. So let's dive right in.
All right, Brett, let's get right into it. You are a seasoned business litigation attorney. You represent clients with many different types of businesses. The law is changing almost every day. What are you seeing out on the front lines as far as how your clients are handling these changes in the law?
Yeah, it's a great question, EJ. And what we're seeing is a lot of confusion. I mean, we are digesting this information as soon as there's an update or it's coming out, and we're still getting confused because there's federal activity that's coming down and should be a stimulus package soon from Congress that our clients are asking about. There are all the statewide ordinances. There's still federal law based on how you have to act as an employer and what you can do. The FMLA, the new Emergency Leave Acts. There's so much information right now that it's really creating a lot of confusion. And now you have the order from Miami-Dade County that non-essential businesses need to basically stop operating and operate remotely. And so the question is, well, if I have to shut down my business, does the Emergency Leave Act apply to me? Because I don't even have a business, but I have to pay somebody for 12 weeks who stays home. It just doesn't all add up right now, and it's very confusing. And we're all in this together. Nobody's been through this before. Not somebody in Congress, not the president, not your local mayors, not the governor, not any of us. And so I think everyone's doing their best to get through it, but it is definitely creating a lot of confusion.
All right, you said a very relevant word there, non-essential businesses. I think that's the key word that's being thrown around. Could you explain to our viewers what's the difference between non-essential businesses and essential businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Miami-Dade and now Broward and maybe other counties have said is that essential businesses are able to stay open and operate, and non-essential businesses must not congregate and they must not operate from their commercial place of business. So what does that mean, and who is an essential and non-essential business? Well, there's a detailed emergency order which lists very specifically what is a non-essential and what is an essential business. But for the most part, the non-essential businesses are things like art and craft stores, barbers, beauty salons, nail studios, casinos. Quick side note, in Nevada, the very first two businesses listed as essential were cannabis and liquor related businesses. So just thought that was kind of a funny aside. But golf courses, fishing charters, tennis clubs, social clubs, these are businesses that if they went away, people would still live, right? So then you think, well, what is an essential business? And that is, of course, hospitals, certain restaurants, different things that we all need to operate and to make sure that we don't get in too much trouble as a community. And that's, look, I know it sounds a little bit confusing as we've used that word a bunch, but the actual order from Miami-Dade County lists each business. And then you may not agree with it because some people said, well, why are law firms essential? And the way that they linked that was law firms that are helping other essential businesses are able to operate. And it's confusing and it's changing. I know in Pennsylvania, for example, they came out with an order of essential versus non-essential, and then 2 days later, they made a bunch of changes. And maybe that'll happen in Florida, maybe not, but it's all happening so quickly, you gotta stay tuned.
Very interesting. And what happens if they violate those orders?
Yeah, we're getting this question a lot too. It's like, well, what if I just stay in business? Everyone is at the park hanging out, so what's the difference? Well, I think it depends on how bad the coronavirus gets, because if you start seeing just a crazy jump and the panic spreads, then what's going to happen here is what has been happening, and I mentioned Nevada earlier, is people are calling 911, reporting businesses that are still operating, and they're saying, stop calling 911. This is not a medical emergency. But the thing that can happen with business owners is they can be fined for continuing to operate or for violating the order, and they could be hit with penalties against their licenses. So that's a big deal. And we're not just talking about a license, for example, like a lawyer or a CPA would have, but you're talking about occupational licenses that they can take away from the beauty salon, from the casino, from another essential license to operate. If the county yanks that from you, then you're out of business. So, look, the civil penalties can be very tough on a business, because you could get fined, which you deal with, or you could have your license suspended or even terminated. And you definitely don't want that to happen.
And do you actually see the government imposing these civil fines and going to court to try to collect these judgments?
Look, I think in the short term, like anything else, they may try to make an example of somebody or a few businesses, and then it'll die off and go away. And I'm sure a lot of them will get dismissed, and people will go to court up in arms and say it was pandemonium, and we had the coronavirus to deal with, and judges will start dismissing these things. But a quick funny story is, yesterday I was out and about in Palmetto Bay in our golf cart, because we can rent our golf carts here, and I saw somebody with a tent set up trying to sell things in their front yard, and a police officer trying to shut that business down in that person's front yard. And I didn't stop because I was with my daughter, but that's what you're seeing already, is that the police have the authority to enforce the closure of non-essential businesses. And so if someone's trying to have a yard sale, then you're not going to be allowed to. And it seems people are posting online, and it's like, what happened to our freedom? What happened to our due process? What happened to our rights? That's the problem with executive authority, and it's not only a federal problem, but a local problem as well. So listen, EJ, what I want to do is ask you, because I've talked about the civil side of things and the civil penalties, but let's talk about even a step further, and criminal liability. Is there any potential for offenders or repeat offenders or repeat violators of the order by Miami-Dade County? If somebody's violating that order, can they actually get arrested?
Well, there is, Brett. It's a law that's been on the books since 2001. And since that time, we've been lucky enough to not have a public health emergency like we have now. But the short answer is yes. There's a law on the books that does impose criminal penalties for anyone that violates a Florida governor's order pursuant to a public health emergency, or a mayor's order pursuant to a local emergency. The mayor in Miami has imposed that order for the safety of people in Miami and closed all non-essential businesses. So hypothetically, yes, if someone violates that order, then they could be arrested and punished up to 180 days in the county jail.
180 days, so half a year in jail for violating a county ordinance to close your business or not to congregate.
Well, that's the maximum sentence.
Okay.
If you have no prior record going into it, the judges aren't going to be chomping at the bit to put people in jail for 6 months. However, that is the maximum sentence imposed by law. But short story is get a good attorney.
Exactly. That's always a short story. And then part of our confusion is, why is there not a statewide order? Why are the orders coming county by county? And then who are we supposed to listen to when the governor goes on TV and makes a declaration or an emergency order? And what's the difference between a county order and a state order regarding a health emergency?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's confusing a lot of people, Brett, is that, you're dealing with the federal government, you're dealing with the state government, and you're dealing with the county government, and all three have the ability to impose separate orders. So in the state of Florida right now, we've imposed the closure of things like restaurants, nightclubs, gyms, but Miami has gone a step further and more narrowly prohibited all non-essential businesses, and Broward just imposed that this morning. And so that's the difference. And, that's why a lot of people are getting confused on what they can and can't do.
Yeah, it's all very confusing. So I guess, do the best you can, but stay home. And if you find yourself to be a non-essential business, call us and let's talk it through. But for the most part, we're not going to be able to do much about it. So we know there's potential civil liability, and you've told us there's potential criminal liability. But what do you really see happening here? Do you really think that people are going to potentially be arrested under these emergency orders?
I mean, look, Brett, no one, no law enforcement agency, no police officer is going to want to arrest a business owner that is simply trying to provide for his family and his children. However, I think there's going to come a point in this whole thing that if the epidemic goes on long enough and, this goes on for months rather than weeks, where people, might try to resist and might try to work because they feel like they need it for their livelihood. And there may come a point, if people are not voluntarily following the law as outlined by the state of Florida or from the mayor in Miami, where people, say, I got to do what I got to do. And at that point, if enough people violate the law, then police and state agencies might take things into their own hands, and arrest could happen. It's possible.
Yeah, crazy times. I just unprecedented, right, for anyone alive right now. And so who knows, unfortunately. I wish we could give definite guidance, but it's just very, very confusing right now as a lot of changes happen very quickly.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, EJ, it's been fun, man. Let's do it again as we get more updates, and it was a pleasure.
Sounds good. Good talking to you, Brett.